I'm ready.
All right, and we're recording. So today on the Actors Voice Conversations, we are thrilled to welcome Dan Hasty. Hi, Dan.
What's
Welcome.
up? Thank you.
Dan is a proud member of Actors Equity Membership Program, and he grew up in Abingdon, Maryland, which is actually how we met. Dan spent his early childhood performing in theater and entertaining at family functions and doing the community theater scene, and then when he finished high school in 2010, Dan decided to travel to Manhattan to study with the American Musical and Dramatic Academy. Since graduating from there in 2012, he's been working, touring, working some more, and living the dream. I love this, Dan. Just looking down your list here, favorite productions: She Loves Me, Sipos, the Tent Theater in Springfield, Missouri, and where's your other? Oh, here it is. You're training and devising new works with the Hangar Theater as a member
Yeah.
of the lab company in Ithaca. So
Yeah.
we're thrilled to welcome Dan, and we can't wait to hear about all the wonderful things you're doing.
Cool. I'm looking forward to it.
So, Dan, right out of the gate, one of the first things we do on the Actors Voice Conversations is ask the general question: how did you get started in music, in theater, in the performing arts, and how did you get where you are now?
Well, my very first show that I did as a kid, I was actually legitimately bribed. I was scared to death. I didn't want to do it. Growing up as a kid with a clubbed foot, and I still have one. I've had 5 surgeries on my right foot. I wasn't a sports guy. I couldn't do those things, and I didn't want to be quite honest. So I started, watching TV Land and watching, all those things, and I started getting very creative early. So I knew that I liked the idea of it, of like drama, but I was like, I can't actually do it. I like it a lot. So my dad and my mom was like, look, they're holding auditions for The Wizard of Oz. And this was after I did one like little camp or something like that, just like a little jump in. But he was like, so you're going to audition for this. And I'm like, but Dad, I don't want to. And he's like, well, here's Elvis Presley, My Best Friend Remembers DVD by Joe Esposito, and we're going to go to Outback. Will you audition then? And I'm like, okay. So I auditioned, got the line of The Wizard of Oz, and that started that was in fifth grade, and then all the shows, like 50 or 60 community theater shows before I even went to school. But the defining moment for me was in high school when I did a play called Noises Off, which is a Michael Frayn comedy ensemble piece, and that to me was just the greatest feeling in the world. Working with a group of actors and creating this story and having people laugh, I was just like, this is heaven. So that's when I started deciding I'm going to tell stories for the rest of my life. Like that's just what I'm going to do. That's just what, no ifs, ands, or buts about it. That's what I'm doing. And then started the college search, which I wish I would have known more about it. Actually, looking back on it,
Yeah.
but yeah, that and then going to AMDA for a year and a half and finishing their program up, deciding not to continue into their BFA program. They have a BFA program with their sister campus in Los Angeles that you're allowed to do. And I decided not to do that because I had booked a 9-month tour straight out of college. And now I'm still here doing the thing and chugging along.
Oh, there you go. So there's a couple of interesting things there. I mean, I definitely want to ask you about AMDA and about that program, but stepping back even a minute before that, you said you wish you'd known more when you were doing your college search, and I think that's something that a lot of students deal with, at different levels.
Totally.
So, can you tell us a little bit about that? Like, what specifically do you looking
Yeah.
back? Do you wish you knew?
Yeah. Well, I mean, when I was a kid, I was always playing above my age, and I still am now. So I was always into character work and like comedic things. So first off, when I was going in for my auditions for programs, I was doing these like, 40-year-old monologues and stuff like that. So it wasn't really me. Like, it wasn't my, it wasn't my voice or whatever. Like, it was, like, it was me just kind of like, I'm gonna do my thing where I make you laugh, and then you laugh at me, and then that's gonna work. So I didn't really understand what material to be doing for these things. So that was the first major thing. But then secondly is I was just like, I was just sort of believing everything that I heard from like my other friends in the around or whatever. And like, I was just sort of like auditioning for places that they said, because they said they were really good or whatever. But like, because I was doing so much community theater, I didn't even have the time to visit a lot of these campuses. Like, in my mind, it was just like, I love to tell stories. Wherever I go, I'm gonna be happy if I'm telling story. You know what I mean? There wasn't that mindset of being like, oh, I need to be really careful about this specific program or whatever, to really train me. I didn't have that mindset. I was just like, go somewhere to tell stories. That's gonna work. I wish I would have had more of a list of like more small time, sort of say, liberal arts colleges, maybe, to go train there before jumping to New York, because jumping to New York is a lot. It's a lot. And it depends on the person, of course, but for me, it's a lot, because essentially what you're doing when you do a conservatory program is you're putting 4 years of training into a year and a half or 2 years.
Yeah.
And that was a lot.
Right. So let me, some of the things you're talking about when you're looking at schools and you're doing those things, what kind of becomes indispensable is some kind of teacher, mentor, coach situation. What kind of training were you doing in high school, or were you working with anyone at that time that was kind of prepping you for college auditions, or were you really going it alone at that point?
I mean, I did have a voice teacher at that time, but so I had a voice teacher from like something like 2008 maybe or so that I sort of started working with, and then that teacher wasn't doing lessons in the summer, so I felt like I was losing something in between the summer. Like, they just didn't want to work summer, and that's fine. That's cool, whatever. So I felt like I was losing something. And then my choral teacher had suggested to me this other teacher to study with in high school. And essentially what happened to me vocally is I started getting conflicting messages and not really sure of who to listen to and what to listen to. So then I wasn't really sure vocally what I was supposed to do in these auditions, because I had these different voices in my head, and I didn't have the consistency of being able to study with someone like week by week by week. So I didn't have an acting coach or anything like that, which now tons of people do. Like, that's a huge thing now. There's my friend is an acting coach just specifically for people going into college. Like, that's specifically what she does. But when I was growing up, I didn't have that, or I didn't know that. A lot of my directors that I was working with was very big on suggesting community college first. That was the big suggestion. But you know what? And maybe that was the right choice, but in my brain, when I got to the point where I went to New York, I was like, oh my God, I'm in New York. And like, the lights of New York just kind of like, the love of New York just kind of like pulled me from making a smart decision, But now, having said that, there are some very good things about AMBUS program,
Sure.
but
I want to get there for sure. Like, I mean, it's interesting. You're talking to the two of us. We both teach at community colleges, but it's also about a timeline. You have to really look at your local community college and look at all the options, because not all of them have the performing arts. Right. I know where you came from, so you might have been looking around and saying, I'm not seeing the program I want. I'm not seeing the kind of training I want. I guess I have to leave, and
Right.
not knowing necessarily where to go, and not having what you felt like was that consistent mentorship. Um, so you left there, and you obviously auditioned, and you went to AMDA. So
Right.
jumping from having rather sporadic training into a conservatory program that was accelerated, how did
Yeah.
that go?
Uh, it was crazy. It was crazy. Um, well, because all of a sudden, look, so, I mean, I don't know if you remember this about me or not, but I sort of have been, and still to this day, is that actor that sings. Like, I'm more so the funny man that once in a while can surprise you and sing really well. You know what I mean? Like, I was never that, ooh, big singer. Um, so like, I, I, I all of a sudden, first song they assigned me to do for my music theater class is Out There, Hunchback of Notre Dame, and all of a sudden I have to hit, I think it was high A flat, maybe it was the highest note or something in
I
that.
think it's an A flat. Yeah.
A flat, yeah. But to someone that doesn't really know how to do that, to all of a sudden have to get to that point in a month is kind of difficult, you know?
Yeah.
So all of a sudden I'm on this jump track of like trying to hit these notes that I have never even attempted to really hit in my lessons before, because my lessons, like I said, was already conflicting in the beginning from high school. Um, was very was from a very technical spot, which I didn't even understand at that point in time. Like I didn't really get it, but was from a very technical point, and I like I never remembered hitting high notes in those classes. I mean, we were doing very, I guess, middle range stuff or whatever at that point in time.
Sure.
That teacher also specifically was an opera singer. Like that's what she was, an opera singer. Like that was her thing. So it was a very tough. And it almost, honestly, for a while, it got me scared of singing because I was just like, well, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm an idiot. Like what am I doing? So I got to that point where all of a sudden I was like, holy crap, I gotta, I gotta keep working on this type of stuff. And I was getting there. I was getting to a spot where I was doing well, and it didn't happen in that month. It didn't happen in that month. But I guess we're gonna speak about the voice specifically first, and then I'll go to the acting side.
Yeah, well.
But with the voice side, first off, there were conflicting messages within the voice and speech department, and then the singing department. Like how, yeah. So that was kind of interesting of what to weather with that.
Let me ask you, Dan, like, because you went to AMDA, was that the first time when I assume you probably were assigned a voice teacher and you had a regular voice teacher for regular lessons, and it was maybe the first time you worked with a teacher who was geared a little bit more toward MT as opposed to some of the classical styles. So you got working consistently as a singer, even though you consider yourself, an actor singer. It was probably the first time you had like intensive training for voice, right?
Right.
But then you were also going through the acting side of the house, and they have methodologies for voice and diction and speech for actors, and I'm curious about how those things lined up for you, for sure.
Yeah, definitely. So like, well, first off, with the singing stuff, at the time I was like, this is the guy. This is what's going to change everything. But I sort of learned the difference by the end of the program, the difference between a voice coach and a voice teacher. Two very distinct different things. And so essentially what this guy was, he was a coach. He wasn't a teacher. So essentially I was able to get from point A to point B, like just from doing the exercises or doing whatever in the songs. But the problem is then I didn't know how to do it on my own, specifically from like I I just didn't know. I was like, so, and like I got to the like vocal selects of like Arm You Brave. Like I was in the top, of that program because I was, I was listening and telling, doing what he said, but then I didn't know how to apply to that on myself. So speech-wise, they talked a lot. That's Bubba. That's my dog. Can you hear him?
Yes, we can. That's all right though.
Okay. It's gonna take him a second. He just freaks out. On the speech side, my teachers were very big on optimum pitch and your speaking voice of when you're speaking of like sort of being within that tone of that and of starting in that tone, and mine was like I think it was like a D or something or whatever, but you would hear the note and you would have to hum to the note, so it would be like ha, ha, and you would get to that note and then speak the speech from that point. So from that point, so then it became very confusing because it's like, okay, so you're telling me I have to speak all of my speech around this optimal pitch of this spot. I have to be in this spot in order to succeed. Yet then when you're in your lessons or your voice lessons is much more like your voice can do whatever it wants and sit wherever it wants. You just have to do the technique and do the breathing. So it was very confusing to be like, oh, well, I have to be in this vein in this class, and then I can be a little bit more free reign in this class. So that was really
there certainly is a way where those two worlds, those two ideologies mesh together, and they can mesh together very well. But without somebody telling you how to work through that, that's so confusing.
Yeah. It was very confusing. It was very confusing. But sort of what I ended up finding, and sort of what ended up saving me in that program, and that sort of saved me, since then, is I sort of just pick and chose the things that did work from my voice and speech and like from my acting classes, and it would essentially work in my musical theater stuff, because if you're connected to your acting and if you're connected to your beats, I was finding that the voice was also coming out more just in that way, because it was it was all connected, and it was just it was sort of like your the 4 stages of learning, and it sort of started to feel like your unconscious competence. It was sort of starting to get into that vein, because the acting was so good that I wasn't thinking about my voice, and everything was just sort of meshing together. But then when you leave the program and you're not doing it as much, then it's like, oh gosh, well then what are you doing? And looking for a voice teacher in the city and all that type of stuff. So it's crazy. It was crazy.
It is. Well, and it sounds like, again, it was, you were kind of tossed into the deep end, and you had these kind of conflicting methodologies, and very little time to create a kind of a cohesive, this is who I am and this is my voice. You had, sort of these disparate ideas flying at you. If I had to guess, I'm just, I'm listening to the optimum speech. John, does it sound to you like they're looking for where your voice naturally has its peak resonance?
Yeah, that's exactly it.
That's exactly what I
finding,
would say. Yeah.
Totally.
And then, within singing, of course, you have a wider range. You're not always singing, like one note wonder. You're not Johnny one-noting on your peak resonance at all times. You have to learn to maximize that resonance throughout the range of your voice. But I would imagine that as an actor, as you expand out, you found ways to maximize that resonance throughout your range, so that you have those highs and lows, and you have those peaks and valleys. Because, like you said, as you apply those skills, your range grows.
Right.
As
totally,
a vocalist
totally.
and as an actor, that's pretty amazing. So when you left AMDA, did you look for a teacher, kind of a technician? Or
I wrote this down because this is one of the things I wanted to make sure to say, when it came up. so anyone watching this would not necessarily do what I did. But okay, so one, two, three, four, five, six, 7, 8, 9, 10. I've had at least 10 different voice teachers in New York City. Now, this is also just one lesson here, just shopping around and looking around. Sure. So, which is something I highly suggest for all performers to do when they're, because a lot of times, it's such a vulnerable thing performing. So you get suggested that teacher and you're just like, oh, well, this person said that teacher, that just has to be the right choice. It has to be. There's no way it's not that person. And that's not necessarily the case. So I started looking and I started looking around for that proper voice teacher. And I went through the gamut, of all the top, voice studios or so in New York City. But here's the interesting thing. The top voice teachers in the city have apprentices, have apprentice teachers. So you can't necessarily even study with the real teacher. You have to study with their apprentices and then maybe get lucky and sort of get noticed and go into that program. So it seemed a little bit like, what? What's going on here? And these top voice teachers that I was researching would be up to $225, $325 a lesson, which is crazy balls, crazy sauce. Mm-hmm. So I made it my mission that I was like, there's got to be someone out here that can do a voice lesson that's relatively nice, and I can learn a lot from, that is not at $325 or $225 a lesson, And so I found someone that I really liked. That I would say was sort of I learned the most from. But even so, this is crazy. But once Donald Trump got elected, he decided he didn't want to live in New York anymore, and that he would only do online lessons. So then I lost that teacher. I mean, I could have continued online, but I just didn't feel like it was the same thing. So now I have found someone that I really like. And keep in mind too, I would have a voice lesson, I would be working with voice teachers, then I would get a job for 9 months, or get a job for 6 months, or get a job for 4 months, so then you're losing that every day, which is a very interesting thing to sort of juggle. So I highly suggest for all people to really shop and take the time to find whoever that person is going to be for you, and be able to make the choice. If they decide, well, in this case, he was leaving. I felt like I didn't really have a choice, but make a choice to leave if it's not the training you want, and find someone else. And then to really make sure while you go out on the road, and you go out on the road, obviously you're not going to be able to get a voice lesson every when you're on the road, but you can at least get in a month check-in, or something, do something while you're still out on the road to keep yourself sharp. And that, and it's worth the financial risk, because that was my thing. When you're making $250 a week, sometimes that lesson money isn't good. It's not there. Well, but I think it would have been worth it to keep that going.
I couldn't agree more. And it's interesting, my narrative students, and I'm sure John has a similar one, is, you want to make sure that you have someone that you work with consistently, that you're comfortable with, and that works well with you, like you said, Dan, that can give you that foundational technique, so that when you are without lessons for a month at a time, or for 4 months at a time, or when you go away, you have developed yourself a methodology for how to keep yourself in condition and how to keep yourself in shape. And then you check in,
right.
And make sure that you still have that. When you were touring, were you doing musicals a lot, or a lot of plays?
Well, my very first tour was 9 months of Shakespeare. So I was not singing
at all.
Yeah. Well, I was singing in Animal Farm, because we did Shakespeare play in Animal Farm in Rep, and Animal Farm had a little anthem that I got to be the lucky singer of the song. So I did sing Old Major's anthem in Animal Farm. But like I said, I mean, I was making $225 a week, and we would drive. I literally remember the day we had a Saturday night performance in Harford County, and then we had a Sunday night show in Florida. Like that is so so it just didn't that whole 9 months. I did not have a lesson that whole 9 months, and it was crucial, and it was
Well,
yeah.
and I think it's also it's really interesting, and it's great to talk with you because we talk to tons and tons of singer actors, but having an actor who also sings and wants to improve himself as a vocalist, even if it's not kind of your primary billing, is an awesome thing.
Right.
When you do musicals, and I know you do,
Right.
have you gotten to work with some good coaches in that regard?
Yeah, totally. I mean, so like when I found out I was going to do Old Deuteronomy and Cats, that was like a little bit like, okay, so I really need to get back to the singing it now. But keep in mind, clearly, in my brain, I didn't realize this, but clearly, they liked my voice enough then at that point to cast me. So like they did believe that I could do it, which I wish I would have realized that initially. But yeah, so when I found out I was doing Old Deuteronomy, relatively high-end summer stock theater that was. I mean, in the terms of they've only been around 13 years and they have like 15 or so Broadway performers already. So like she cast very well. So like I was like, okay, so I'm in a good company. So she believes I can do it. So I specifically was like, I wanna find someone for the classical side, because I hadn't had like a classical in like a long time. So I found someone, and he runs the Institute of American Music Theater, which is sort of a newer conservatory program. So I studied with him, and he got me in a good spot to do that show. And but then when I left that show and I came back to New York, this was one of those things where it's like it's okay to leave someone. Is as much as I felt like the training was in a good spot. I felt like because he ran this program and he was the main guy, sometimes it would be like, oh, sorry, man, I got to cancel this lesson, 15 minutes prior to the lesson. Like, so sorry, I got to do this or do whatever. And I just sort of started feeling like, I mean, I needed someone that I could always, clearly that I needed someone that I could always count on. And even though he got me ready for that show, I just was like, I feel like I can't continue to be with someone he was just very busy. And he even said it himself. He was like, look, man, I'm sorry. I'm just running a school. I'm running a program, like I don't have time. But yeah, no. So yeah, I have found people that I work with and that I really like.
That's great.
That brings up another question here. Aside from the technical training, what sort of things do you look for in a voice teacher? What are the intangibles? Are you looking for someone who has connections that can get you hooked up for auditions? Are you looking for someone that's just a good rapport? Are you looking for somebody, what are the others?
So connections are great. Connections are huge, because there are so many teachers in New York that do have those connections, and that that agents will send specifically to a voice teacher, being like, hey, work with this. So yes, that's huge. A good feeling with the teacher is important. For me, I found out that I ended up really wanting someone, because I just feel like there's an element of where, just like anything, I mean, voice teachers, they want to make money. So I feel like there is a point in time or at least specifically in New York, where, they're not necessarily as honest with me as I want them to be, So I felt like so the person that I'm with right now, his name is Derek Rosenblatt. He's very well known in the industry. And now, like I said, more on the expensive side, but he's like, you are doing this wrong. This is not right. Instead of just sort of like coaxing through. I feel like sometimes if you're not getting something, that you might get coaxed through and just be like, oh, he didn't really get that, but we have to move on to this, which is dangerous and a little scary. So those things are very important. Just making sure it's someone that's not not going to give up to you. Oh, and huge, this is huge. I've had some teachers not speak on breathing. I had a couple lessons with people that believed, you breathe naturally, you don't need to talk about it. So I knew not to have another lesson with that person. Like the person that said, what is warming up? You speak where you speak, you sing where you sing. You should be able to, do my exercises or whatever, and then you'll be able to say warming up isn't important. It'll just be there. So when you hear certain red flags like that, like they're not talking about breathing, you sort of know to get out of the way.
So it sounds like you're looking for a balance. You're looking for someone who's going to push you to grow, not just kind of be a yes man and say, yeah, that's good enough. You're looking for someone to challenge that technique, who's going to help you grow as a singer, particularly as someone who is an actor first. You're saying like, okay, I'm coming to you because I want to grow as a singer. This is, and so you're looking for someone for that it's going to challenge you, that you're going to have a good rapport with. And I mean, absolutely, you have to shop for things like price point and and recognition and connections, because it's New York. You have probably too many options.
Yeah, there's so many options, and like I said, it's so hard to find the right person.
Sure.
But I believe that if you take your time, that you can really find someone that's really special out there.
Sure. Now, I mean, it's great. So you've obviously, since you've come through your degree program, you're auditioning, you're traveling a lot, you're doing the actor thing. You told us you have your kind of survival job, and then you're working with teachers and coaches, which is added expense. I think every professional knows it, but every student needs to. That when you leave conservatory, when you leave your programs, you're not done.
Oh, no.
Can you speak to that culture a little bit for us? I mean,
yeah, that's one of my favorite topics. Well, because some of my friends, really have that mindset of like, I went to AMDA, or I went to school, or wherever the program was. It's like, I learned that. I don't need to do, I don't need to do anymore. And I'm like, are you literally insane? Like, are you kidding me? And I'm like, if you want to go ahead and, cry on cue right now, go ahead, show me that emotional range. And then more often than not, then the person's like, well, I can't really do that or whatever. So yeah, training, it's always important to sharpen your toolboxes. Oh my gosh. And, same sort of thing with acting too. There's so many different methods and so many different ways to go forward in that sort of training. And I haven't had as much of a journey vocally as I have with that, because I just have more of a. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, let's go down that road. Like, what kind of, are you working with coaches and teachers now? What kind of acting training are you pursuing post?
Yeah. So, right now it's taken a bit of a step to the side, but before that I was recommended K. Michael Patton Studios in New York, and I was really enjoying the work over with her. She's that teacher that, I don't know if this makes sense. But she's that teacher that simply the best will do. Like she will know if you're not necessarily really committed to a certain objective or a certain point or whatever. And she'll call you out. And the first thing that she'll say after every session or whatever would be like, did you hear that for real? Like, did you really hear what that person is saying to you? And you'd be like, I think I heard, I think I listened as well as I could, so it's very listening based, very Meisner based as her class. Yeah, I find that I really enjoy Meisner. just because I think that takes me out of my head. And so, and sort of like I said, there's that sort of stages of learning. You a lot of people never get to that point of being, unconscious with it. Like you don't think about when you walk right, you just walk right and left, and that's how acting is supposed to feel to you. Like it should, you want it coming from that sort of unconscious place, which is what makes things very exciting. And for me, improv has been huge. Improv helps get out of my head as well. And I've been doing a lot at the People's Improv Theater in New York, and that's another thing. I mean, there's the Magnet. There's the Magnet Improv. There's UCB, although one of their locations closed recently. So I don't know what they're going to do after COVID. There's another huge program over there too that is escaping me at the moment. But yeah, there's tons of programs for improv as well. With acting, the thing that I find more unique is you don't have this thing sort of on the voice side of like waiting to work with that master teacher or whatever. Find a teacher, you get with that teacher, and you just drill whatever you want to drill. So yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. So, Dan, I know you're obviously just like everyone else. You were disrupted by the whole pandemic. What did you have coming up, or do you have coming up, as we kind of find our way out of this?
Well, I was lucky in that the Hangar Theater program that I have been selected to do is that they're going virtually. So I'm gonna still be working with them from June 2nd to June 27th, where it's actually a little bit unique in the sense that this is part a training program as well. I felt like I wanted to do there's so many different programs out there for where you can work with a regional theater and sort of take classes with them and also perform in their shows, and I just felt like I wanted to get a little bit more I wanted to get more higher end regional theaters on my resume. So I specifically passed on more of the low end summer stock work to go here this year, which, that low end summer stock ended up not even happening virtually. So it looks like it's all going to work out. Yeah, so we're doing it virtually, and it's going to be where I'm going to get like some classes in acting and Shakespeare and some voice stuff. And it's a Chekhov based, we're going to devise a Chekhov based piece. I don't know specifically what their plans are. I just know that it's Chekhov based. And then we're going to do a children's theater piece and give it to the Hangar Theater subscribers and stuff like that. And they're an equity house, so working with them now will also further my points along, and do that whole thing, which is a whole other, which is a whole other conversation.
But it's good basic information. So for our listeners who are kind of in that direction, can you tell us briefly? You're doing the Actors Equity Membership Program. In a nutshell, like kind of how that program works.
Yeah, so it's 1 point a week for performance work, and they changed it from 52 to 25. So it is much easier to get. However, now there's an influx of equity members and people that aren't necessarily ready to do it. So,
Sure.
So it's a really tough decision to just make, to know, if you're ready, if you're not ready, all that type of stuff. I have I think I have 17 at this point in time. So yeah, and if you go on Actors Equity, equitymembership.com or whatever, there's a list of the theaters that offer EMC points, because there's so many theaters that don't offer them. So you just sort of have to look through and be like, okay, well, this one offers them. I can try to go over there and try to get seen by them. Conferences are huge. I don't know if you guys talk about those with your students, but UPTA, SETC, Midwest Theater Auditions, A1 Auditions, Straw Hats, those are huge to get points and get companies to start that program. Unless you're you're a star and you get your equity card right away. But most people don't do that.
It's just good. It's good information, for students all the time, and it's interesting because we deal with, on the theater side and the MT side, it's of course actors equity, and on the more classical side with opera houses, it's AGMA. But
Right.
those programs where you're working toward full membership are important for students to know about.
Totally.
Yeah, I think John, unless you've got anything else, I'm going to ask our last question.
I think you should go
All
for
right.
it.
I
Let's
think
do it.
So, Dan, we always try to wrap up by asking what advice you have, and you've given some great advice already. But if you were talking to young actors, singers, about the career, about the industry, about the path, what kind of advice would you have to give to some of these students coming through now?
I would say one, it's okay to take your time. Take your time. And ask the questions you need asked. And if someone makes you feel dumb for asking a question, then that's the wrong teacher for you. It's okay to not understand something. There are so many different ways to learn. You're a visual learner. I'm a visual learner, and Derek finally realized he's a visual learner. No wonder why some certain things didn't click for you. And so you just have to learn what type of learner you are, and know that, and keep going and keep asking the questions, and don't let the industry paint you in a picture and say you have to be this, you have to be this type, you have to be this person. Be who you are and be your natural self, and when you do that, that's when the magic things start to happen, and that's when more callbacks start to happen for you. So I think that's what I would say. Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. Be authentic.
Yeah, totally.
I think that's singers. That's
Got
that's
to.
everybody. And it's advice that's just resounds.
Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah.
I
Read
love
all the plays. Read all the books on the voice that you can. Just read. Watch foreign films. Yeah.
I like it.
Expose yourself to art. Yeah, totally.
I love it. Hey, Dan, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been a pleasure, and it's good to see you.
It's good to see you as well. It's good to see you. Nice meeting you as well.
Good to
okay?
meet you too.
Yep. All right. Stay safe, everyone.
Indeed.